George Russell just set the fastest lap in sprint qualifying in China. But minutes later, the FIA started looking at that lap again. Not because of a crash. Not because of track limits. Because the Mercedes W17 might already be too fast. 2 race weekends into the 2026 season, Mercedes has taken pole in Australia, won the race, and now locked out the front row again in Shanghai. Russell first. Antonelli second. And the gap to the rest of the grid is starting to worry rival teams. Telemetry from Russell's pole lap is now being analyzed after engineers noticed something unusual in how the car transitions between corners and straight-line speed. Something that could reveal a hidden advantage in the brand new 2026 regulations. If that advantage is real, it could change the entire championship before the season even properly begins. And the most surprising part is that the answer might be hidden in one specific moment of Russell's lap in Shanghai. A moment that most viewers completely missed. So before we break down exactly what happened during that sprint qualifying lap, and why the FIA is now taking a closer look at the Mercedes W17, subscribe to the channel. Because what we are seeing right now could be the beginning of a brand new Formula One domination era. The Chinese Grand Prix weekend was supposed to give us answers about the new season. Instead, it may have created even bigger questions. Because only 2 races into the 2026 championship, one team already looks dangerously strong. Mercedes. When Formula One arrived in Shanghai, many teams were still trying to understand their cars. New regulations. New power unit balance. New aerodynamic systems that change how these machines behave on both corners and straights. Most teams are still experimenting. Trying different setups. Trying to find the correct operating window. But Mercedes arrived looking ready. From the very first moment on track. There was only one practice session before sprint qualifying began. Just 1 hour. And that hour usually reveals a lot about how prepared a team really is. If the car works immediately, the drivers gain confidence. If it does not, the entire weekend becomes a recovery mission. In Shanghai, Mercedes looked comfortable immediately. George Russell went fastest in practice. Right behind him, only a fraction slower, was Kimi Antonelli. First and second. Same team. That alone immediately caught attention across the paddock. Because this circuit is not easy to master. Shanghai demands balance in every type of corner. Long high-speed turns. Tight technical sections. Heavy braking zones that punish any instability. If a car has weaknesses, this circuit exposes them quickly. Yet the Mercedes W17 looked composed everywhere. Stable on entry. Strong on traction. And extremely efficient on the straights. Engineers from rival teams immediately started watching the timing screens more carefully. Because the Mercedes was not gaining time in just one section of the track. It was gaining time in every sector. That usually means something important. The car is working as a complete package. Aerodynamics. Energy deployment. Mechanical balance. Everything synchronized. Which is extremely rare this early in a new regulation era. Normally it takes teams months to reach that level of harmony. Yet Mercedes looked like they already understood the new generation of Formula One cars. And that feeling only grew stronger a few hours later when sprint qualifying began. Because from the very first laps of the session, the same pattern appeared again. Russell near the top of the timing screens. Antonelli right behind him. And every time the track improved, the Mercedes improved with it. That consistency told engineers something very important. The car was predictable. The drivers trusted it. And when a Formula One driver fully trusts the car beneath them, the final qualifying lap can become something very special. Which is exactly what was about to happen in Shanghai. Because the final phase of sprint qualifying was about to produce the lap that triggered the FIA's attention. And possibly revealed just how powerful the Mercedes W17 really is. The final phase of sprint qualifying in Shanghai is where everything changed. This is the moment where drivers stop managing the lap. And start attacking it. New tires. Maximum energy deployment. Every corner pushed to the absolute limit. Because in that final run, there is only one goal. Find the perfect lap. Russell left the garage for his final attempt while the track was reaching its fastest condition of the entire session. Grip was improving with every minute. The temperature of the asphalt was exactly where teams wanted it. And every driver knew this was the last opportunity to deliver a lap that could define the entire sprint weekend. The tension in the paddock was building quickly. Ferrari looked competitive in certain sectors. McLaren was gaining time in the technical section. And some engineers still believed that Verstappen could produce a surprise lap. But when Russell started his final attempt, something about the Mercedes looked different. Not aggressive. Not nervous. Just incredibly controlled. Turn 1 was almost perfect. Shanghai's opening corner punishes even the smallest mistake. Drivers must carry speed while tightening the steering angle for several seconds. Too much throttle and the car slides wide. Too little commitment and the lap loses time immediately. Russell found the balance perfectly. The Mercedes rotated smoothly through the long corner, staying completely planted to the asphalt. Then came the technical middle sector. This is where most qualifying laps collapse. Rapid direction changes. Short braking zones. Constant load transfers through the suspension. If the car is even slightly unstable, the driver has to lift the throttle. But Russell did not lift. The car flowed through the sequence almost effortlessly. And this is where engineers across the pit lane began noticing something interesting on the timing screens. Russell was not gaining massive time in one corner. Instead, he was gaining small amounts everywhere. A few hundredths in one section. Another few hundredths in the next. Tiny gains that kept stacking together. Which is usually the sign of something extremely important. The car is working efficiently in every transition. From braking to corner entry. From corner exit to acceleration. Everything connected. Then Russell reached the most critical part of the entire lap. The exit that leads onto Shanghai's enormous back straight. This is where the new generation of Formula One cars reveal their true performance. Because several systems activate at the same time. The hybrid power unit begins deploying energy aggressively. The car reduces drag using the adjustable aerodynamic systems. And the driver goes full throttle for one of the longest acceleration zones on the calendar. Normally, this moment creates instability. When drag suddenly drops, the front of the car can feel light. Drivers sometimes have to correct the steering slightly. But Russell's car looked incredibly stable. The transition happened so smoothly that it almost looked effortless. And the speed trace that followed is what caught the attention of rival engineers. Because the Mercedes was accelerating earlier than most cars. And continuing to gain speed all the way down the straight. By the time Russell approached the final corners, the lap already looked extremely strong. But what happened next confirmed it. Russell exited the final turn cleanly. Full throttle. The Mercedes surged down the main straight. And when he crossed the finish line, the timing screen immediately updated. 1 minute. 31 seconds. 520 thousandths. Pole position for the sprint race. And suddenly the paddock went quiet. Because the lap was not just fast. It was dominant. Russell had been fastest in every phase of the session. Every segment. Every run. Which is when the analysis began. Engineers started comparing sector times. Reviewing onboard footage. Studying the speed traces from that lap. And that is exactly when the first quiet conversations started circulating inside the paddock. Not accusations. But questions. Because the way the Mercedes transitioned between cornering performance and straight-line speed looked extremely efficient. Possibly more efficient than any other car on the grid right now. And when a team suddenly looks that strong under brand new regulations, the governing body always wants to understand exactly why. Which is why the FIA began reviewing the data from Russell's lap shortly after the session ended. Not because something looked obviously illegal, but because in Formula One, sometimes the biggest discoveries begin with a single question. How did that car go so fast? But the story did not stop when the session ended. In fact, that is when the real analysis began. Because inside Formula One, every qualifying lap is studied in extreme detail. Engineers immediately download telemetry. They compare throttle traces, energy deployment curves, aerodynamic behavior, even the smallest movement of the steering wheel. And when Russell's data started circulating among rival teams, something became very clear. The Mercedes W17 was not just quick in one area of the lap. It was efficient everywhere. Through the high-speed sections. Through the technical middle sector. And especially on the long straights where the new 2026 regulations play a huge role. Those regulations introduced one of the most complex systems Formula One has ever used. Active aerodynamics combined with new hybrid energy deployment strategies. In simple terms, the car can reduce drag on the straights by adjusting the front wing. Teams often call this configuration straight mode. When the system activates, the front wing changes position, reducing aerodynamic resistance. That allows the car to reach higher speeds on long straights. But there is a trade-off. When drag drops, the car also loses some front downforce, which can create understeer. And in some cases, instability. Drivers sometimes describe the feeling as if the front of the car suddenly becomes lighter. Even George Russell admitted earlier in the weekend that this system can feel unpredictable when it activates. Especially when leaving the slipstream of another car. That is why Russell's qualifying lap in Shanghai raised eyebrows. Because the Mercedes looked incredibly stable during those transitions. Almost too stable. The car switched between cornering balance and straight-line speed without visible struggle. which is extremely difficult to achieve under the new technical rules. That is where the FIA stepped in. Not with accusations, not with penalties, but with curiosity. When a car suddenly performs at this level, the governing body often reviews the data to ensure everything is operating within the regulations. And that is exactly what happened after sprint qualifying. Officials began reviewing the telemetry related to Russell's lap, particularly how the aerodynamic system behaved during those key moments on the straights. At the same time, rival teams were doing their own analysis. Because what Mercedes achieved in Shanghai could represent something much bigger than a single pole position. It could reveal that Mercedes has understood the 2026 regulations earlier than everyone else. That possibility becomes even more interesting when you look at the rest of the grid. Red Bull, for example, is currently struggling to find balance with their new car. Max Verstappen described the situation during practice as a disaster, complaining about zero grip and poor balance. In sprint qualifying, he could only manage 8th position on the grid, something that almost never happened during the previous era of dominance. Meanwhile, Ferrari and McLaren looked competitive in certain parts of the circuit, but neither team could match the Mercedes across the entire lap. The W17 appeared strong in every sector. Fast through corners, stable under braking, and extremely efficient in energy deployment. That combination is exactly what teams dream of at the start of a new regulation cycle. A car that does not depend on a single strength. A car that works everywhere. Which is why the question circulating around the paddock tonight is becoming more serious. Is the Mercedes W17 simply a great car? Or is it the first dominant machine of the new Formula One era? Because if Mercedes really has found the perfect balance between aerodynamics, hybrid power, and mechanical grip this early in the season, the rest of the grid may already be facing a very difficult challenge. And that brings us to the biggest uncertainty of this entire situation. The FIA investigation itself. Right now, it is only a review of data. Nothing more. Many of these technical checks end with confirmation that everything is completely legal. But the fact that the review exists tells you something important. When a team suddenly becomes this fast under brand new regulations, everyone starts paying attention. Every system, every technical detail, every advantage. Because sometimes, the smallest discovery at the beginning of a season can shape the entire championship. And after what we saw in sprint qualifying in Shanghai, one possibility is starting to worry the rest of the Formula One paddock. Mercedes may have discovered something that the other teams still do not fully understand.